So White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt announced that the Associated Press has been banned from the Oval Office for not honoring the recent renaming of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Take a look.
It is a privilege to cover this White House. It's a privilege to be the White House press secretary. And nobody has the right to go into the Oval Office and ask the President of the United States questions. That's an invitation that is given. And there are hundreds of outlets on this campus, many of you in this room who don't have the privilege of being part of that pool every single day and getting to ask the President questions. We reserve the right to decide who gets to go into the Oval Office. And you all have credentials to be here, including the Associated Press, who is in this briefing room today.
So, the White House Correspondents Association released a statement, and it said the White House cannot dictate how news organizations report the news, nor should it penalize working journalists because it is unhappy with their editors' decisions. And the AP is signaling legal action, calling this a violation of their First Amendment rights. Now, and the reason I got to read that is because I said, you know, it's so funny. I haven't seen it reported anywhere else. I haven't seen that piece of information anywhere else.
What, that it's illegal?
That the AP said, that they said, listen, we're not standing for this.
Right. Yeah.
That's a huge, you know, and because I was saying to Robin, I said, you know, they all need to get together and push back. You can't do it one at a time. She said, no, and then she gave me that piece of information. So are they right?
Yes, they are. I mean, we do have the Constitution still, at least in the United States. And, you know, I think the First Amendment is the First Amendment because it's one of the most important amendments, right? And it's freedom of speech. It's the most important, arguably. And the press is the direct check for the government overreach. It's the direct check. It's the press reports to the American people the facts of what is really happening. Or, you know, and so I think there's no question that the AP should defend its constitutional rights. And what the Trump can, I guess, certainly bar people from the Oval Office, but what they cannot do is tell people what they can say. They cannot do it. And one last thing, the AP style guide is many newsrooms across the country follow the AP's style guide. And it was published on January 23rd of this year after the executive order. And what it said was renaming the Gulf of Mexico is one thing, but Trump's order only carries authority within the United States, and other countries do not have to recognize the change. And so they're reporting it accurately.
So I disagree with barring the Associated Press. When I worked in the White House, I always fought for media access, both at home and abroad when we were traveling.
You disagreed with what?
With the decision to bar the Associated Press from being in the Oval Office. I don't actually hate renaming the Gulf of America, and I'm going to tell you why. It's a more inclusive term. It is North America. Mexico and the United States are part of the Americas. It would be petty if he called it the Gulf of the United States by basically saying it's our countries, it's not yours. But these are the things Donald Trump does to trigger reaction from the media, so they cover this and pay more attention than we're wholesale getting rid of government agencies or we're confirming Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence. I'm perfectly fine with it, and I'm perfectly fine with the AP covering it how they think they should.
In that case, this country that we're in was settled by indigenous people, right? And yet they named the country after an Italian white man, Amerigo Vespucci.
Yeah.
That's what America is named after. Amerigo Vespucci, a white European. Why is it named after a white man?
Well, let me
when it was settled by indigenous people.
Well, let me just add some color, because I didn't know how common it was. Sorry, color, context, all the things. But so technically, that it is okay to rename this. Different people have, Cuba, Mexico, and the U.S. have claims, depending on whether you're talking about conservation or otherwise, hundreds of miles out into the sea. This actually happens in the global economy or country. Or Oh my
around the
God.
globe.
So
Yes.
the body of water south of China, which much of the world calls the South China Sea, China calls it South Sea, Vietnam calls it Eastern Sea, and Philippines has designated parts of it the West Philippine Sea. So it happens. I needed to know that because I was like, why would you wide swath it? And Google and GPS things will call it Gulf of America only in this country. So then if you search it outside, so it's like, it's a little more complicated. It's a dumb thing
But
to hang your hat
why does he care
on.
about it when the prices are going up on eggs? Why does it focus on this?
Because arguably, in addition to the bird flu, he's the reason it's going up.
Yeah.
He'd much rather focus on renaming.
No,
Inflation
people
is
did
going
not
up,
vote.
everyone.
People did not vote to rename the Gulf of Mexico. They voted because they kept complaining about prices and inflation.
That's an
And as far
uncomfortable
as I
topic
can-
for him
As far
right
as
now.
I can see, inflation is on the rise.
It is on the rise.
Thank you very much.
People will
That's a
talk
fact.
about the Gulf of Mexico in the Kennedy Center.
But more important, plastic straws in the Gulf of America. Give me a break.